On the run, I feel the freest. I know I'm free in my soul, and I can never, ever go back. My feet and my mind move too much, but I cannot be still enough to ever stop remembering my captivity. I remember that the muddy hem of my skirt clung to the tops of my frozen feet, but I ignored the clinging cold as I carried the basket through the shorn and empty field that had grown corn just a few moons before. It had been 2 years since I was given no choice but to leave Warrisqueek Bay for Dismaltown. Robert Burwell, the man who claimed to own my life, my mother's life, and the lives of my sisters Nellie and Rachel, had proven the power of his claim on me and on us all. I remember the burn of my ear, pressed as it had been against the parlor door some weeks before my tearful departure. I had heard the cruel and unfeeling utterance of my name while passing through those Burwell halls. And as I stole an earful, I heard Robert and his son Nathaniel agreeing on the prudence of sending Jack and I to labor at Dismal Plantation in Dismaltown, a new settlement on the outskirts of a foreboding swamp, they said. The Burwell men believed my mother, sisters, and the other dozen house servants were too valuable and unsuited to labor in and near the uncertain and unhealthy swamp. But not Jack. My talkative, artful, and very saucy Jack. And me, their very smooth-tongued Venus, with my cunning and less than subordinate disposition. Two of us were apparently fit to work alongside more than 40 enslaved men, not even a dozen other bondwomen, and 2 lonely children when we first arrived to the swamp in 1769. The head overseer was a man with an ever-watchful eye, and he called himself John Augustine Washington. It was clear to me that he thought a great deal about his authority at Dismaltown, as did his proud brother George. Back then, Jack was 33 and I was 30. We were everything to each other, and we grew close in the swamp, as we found ourselves to be the only friends among strangers. We soon discovered that keeping our spirit ablaze, our focus sharpened, and our will to live lives of our own choosing were pursuits we both shared and gave to each other with greater passion as each day passed. Under the shady cover of our favorite corner of the lush swamp, away from the searching eyes of the overseers, we vowed ourselves to each other and to our liberty. 2 years after we first arrived at Dismal Plantation, the swish of the cold mud was dragging at the hem of my skirt as I walked across the depleted cornfield, looking ahead to where Mr. John Washington was awaiting me to serve him his meal. I glanced to a scene nearest the swampy woods in the close distance and saw Jack and a small group of other men hauling and carting wood staves back into camp. Jack and the others looked as though they had had a maddening day of felling trees and cutting drainage ditches, just as I knew I looked weary from felling away the unwelcomed advances of so many men, while also completing my heavy load. As I neared John, I breathed deeply, knowing Jack and I had plans that would no longer include serving the Burwells, the Washingtons, or any part of the Dismal Swamp Company and its Dismal Town and Plantation, each there in the swamp to clear its forests, drain away the black water, and perpetuate its onslaught of our captivity and forced labor. The few women I had met there and I understood too well, too, that we would be expected to both produce and reproduce the force of this labor. And I, for one, had resolved to reject it all. We would run that November night in 1771. When it was dark, Jack and I, carrying several different kinds of apparel, met at the edge of Dismaltown where it borders the undisturbed, dense, and inviting swamp. We had already had countless conversations about running, and as we believed no one would expect our flight on the very eve of winter, we decided it was the time. We were right. We were to go south, deeper into the morass. We looked for all the thick and secret places we knew most white men dared not go. There is much to say about our lives in the great swamp, but I would not tell more of it, other than to say that with my own eyes, I saw and lived freely in the company of sons and daughters of Africa who all shared in the knowledge that outside of our new home, atop the boggy earth and mire, we were sure to have faced certain lives of suffering and death. The Burwells were determined to succeed in our recapture, and eventually they did. Jack and I met our failure to continue to elude them with greater hardship and the bittersweet reunion with old friends, family, my mother, and beloved sisters. Curiously, our time in the Dismal Swamp earned Jack a new appellation. The Burwells soon began to call my Jack, almost fondly, Jack Dismal. Though they each knew that I, too, had forayed the great swamp in front of him, behind him, and by his side, they never thought of me in any such a way. For I was to them their sable Venus, vessel of intimate labor and increase alone. After our recapture, I was reinstated in the Burwell house, pained beyond measure when they sent Jack away to a Mr. James Hunter, out of reach and up the James River. But Jack was a true-born fugitive. He was quick to run away from Mr. Hunter, as he knew that the James River and its sprouting streams and creeks would get him back to me. He was still safe from discovery in February 1773, when Robert Burwell could do nothing but rail on about the fact that Jack Dismal had eluded him once again. But it didn't last long. Jack was caught again and returned to us, and we toiled and suffered under the vigilant watch of the Burwell family for 5 years more. And during that time, everyone called Jack and I married, and we held fast to our togetherness and made happiness and created moments of joy where and when we could, but we remained deeply discontent as creatures only understood as slaves. As I stoked the fire for Robert's new wife, Mary, I couldn't help but let my mind take me back into the swamp. There, I had enjoyed full possession of my body, my thoughts, myself. Sleeping under the juniper trees, I was in control of where and when I could go, who could get close to me, who could touch me, and who could not. In the swamp, I was able to imagine that all of my future movements would be made by my own command. But in the Burwells' home, gripped by violence and drudgery, I could barely imagine anything at all. These memories flood my mind and heart with an overcoming rush for unending freedom. But they are not just memories. They are the force that keeps me moving forward. Jack and I are on the run again. It is summertime. In the year 1778, we took a piece of the swamp with us, but this time we also took Zany and Nellie on our journey away. We are each stealthy and in good spirits. The Burwells think that we are lurking in Williamsburg or somewhere in the neighborhood, but we do not lurk. We evade, dodge, and escape. I can still feel the tight hold of the chains of bondage nipping at my heels, but the stronger feeling I get is in the promise that there are other ways to live and exist in this world that I can make and make again. It is better to be in motion, for in each leap and stride, I realize I am already free.